on new and emerging authors. My name is John Copenhaver, and I'm very happy for our first guest today is Margot Douaihy. Hey, Margot.
Hey, John. It's so wonderful to see you. Happy summer.
I know it's just we had a few cool days here in Richmond, Virginia, and I am celebrating. I mean, cool meaning like in the 80s.
Yeah, it's all relative.
Right, right. So, one of the things that we're trying to do at NWA is spotlight more authors, and this is one of the ways we're doing it. And you're our guinea pig, so welcome.
This is my cat, Bearcat, as well, and making an entrance and a lot of
Hey,
mystery writers out there. You know what I'm talking about.
thanks for this interview. We can have.
This is going to make for a very interesting screenshot for our
something
promo.
tells me that cats would know a lot about, crime and.
Oh, and there's a legacy of cat criminality as well in certain cozy mysteries and beyond.
Right. So I'm going to just begin. I know you're not, it's especially a debut now. You have 2 books out, fantastic novels, both of them, but you're still pretty close to the process. So tell us a little bit about your journey to, publication, perhaps to publishing mystery novels. Just tell us a little bit about yourself along those terms.
Yeah, absolutely. I really started out in this creative writing world as a poet. I'm really obsessed with what poetry can do in terms of holding a moment and taking, just a strange little prism or lens to something very ordinary and finding something exquisite or flummoxing or weird about what the everyday can offer to us. And I just loved that. I still love it, and I still try to bring that into the long form. But so for about 15 years, I was just writing poetry and really strange poetry, and it was getting longer and, book length investigations. I did a documentary poetry book about a lace factory in Scranton called Scranton Lace, and then a poetry true crime project about the famous outlaw Belle Starr, whose murder was never solved. She was, called the female Jesse James. And so it's sort of this cold case about this real life figure. And I was trying to investigate the kind of emotional authenticity of her story through, I thought like I could write a book, but writing these weird kind of crime poems about her felt right. But things just kept getting longer, and I've always been obsessed with mysteries. And so ultimately my worlds kind of converged, and I took a spin in the hard-boiled world, but wanted to make the lone wolf figure my own, and kind of brought my interests in existentialism and religion and queer theory and also like liberation theology, all of that with a hard-boiled style, lone wolf kind of led queer nun sleuth series, which turned out to be extremely strange and fun and wild. And so, yeah, it's not an easy kind of story to tell. It doesn't fit neatly into a box, but just I think curiosity leads me to places, and I follow that. I follow those questions and obsessions and try to give them a lot of time in daylight, and weird projects emerge. And so the 2 books in the Sister Holiday series are out. Scorched Grace came out in 2023, and then Blessed Water came out in 2024. And Divine Ruin, which is the 3rd book in the series, will be out January 2026.
Great title. I love all your titles. I think that one thing that I really noticed, particularly about your fiction, is that it does feel like you are, not only bringing a new kind of detective to the genre, but they feel very much in conversation with what's come before. How aware of that conversation were you when you're writing them? And how do you see that conversation evolving now that you've you've written one, and now you've written two, excuse me, and now you're on to your third.
I just love genre. I love the hallmarks of genre, the anchor points of genre, the tropes. They're languages that we speak. And I think those essentials about what can give genre its signatures, its shape, its calling cards are really up for interpretation and reconfiguration. I love reading really kind of classic works from, kind of the canon, quote unquote, blends and spins on them. I think it just gives us this incredible vocabulary to invent, and then also to look at what came before and why they still have this secure foothold of these enduring appeals. So I love looking back, and then I think it gives us so much exciting territory to invent and see what's coming next. So yeah, I think honestly, I'm a huge enthusiast, but I just think genre is really where the most interesting work on the novel form itself. I know it's an enormous claim, and all the modernists and the pro stylists are going to be, clapping at me or whatever. But the novel as this kind of spacious inquiry is just perfect for genre. You're working an incredible invention on what historical queer mysteries can be. Lev Racy Rosen's working with, gay hard-boiled sleuth, J.M. Redmond, so it's like, I think there's such a beautiful honoring of genre as we then take it forward and innovate and still ask, how are these works in kind of conversation with each other? And what can they say about the human condition? And what can they say about the country, about society, about power?
Oh, absolutely. I feel like we're living in a time which is crying out for great crime fiction to, parse what's going on in the world in all kinds of ways. So, it seems like the genre evolves as the world around us evolves. And some genres may take, at times, a little less of, being less capable of interacting with a certain time period. But I would argue that certainly crime fiction, as well as other actually genres, too, are really finding their place. So, you've mentioned some authors. Do you have any specific authors that inspired your debut novel, Scorched Grace? Like, what would you say are like two or three that are like, okay, these guys are really on my mind when I was writing this?
Raymond Chandler.
I knew it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think he doesn't get as much credit as due in terms of his lyricism, and it just is really juicy and sumptuous language. And definitely Megan Abbott, sort of the domestic noir of Dare Me, as well as her kind of, her earlier works that really allow you to see the command of these worlds, and they kind of disclose some of their secrets, but they still leave so much room for readers to kind of go in all of these directions. And then the endings, they just kind of blow us away. And then again, I think crime fiction is just so well poised for this. So those two for sure were in my mind when I was constructing Scorched Grace.
So, since this is going to be viewed by a lot of aspiring crime writers, what advice might you give now that you're sort of through the initial sort of jump from debut to second novel and on to third? Like, what advice might you give looking back?
I think everyone has their unique process, and that's really important. And we figure that out, just through habit and through figuring out what sets us alight, and to truly honor that while kind of doubling down on the things that keep bringing you back to this space and bringing you back to your story. So whatever that initial spark is, that initial question, the character, the mood, the tone, the language itself, whatever it is, to truly let that drive and fire and fuel you, but then also to know that it's hard work. These stories don't kind of,
No.
they shouldn't, I don't think, come to us fully formed. There's a strenuous reaching that gives the work that quality of having fought for something. And I think, when we can rummage around it inside of ourselves, this like deep trembling thing that we're trying to grasp, there's something really beautiful when we do get it. It's horrific. It sometimes feels utterly impossible, and I don't think, like, now that I'm writing my 4th novel, it's it's getting so much easier and it's still impossible, and I think that's right. I think that you know, the discovery and the eureka moments, like, they are earned, they feel right, and there's, like, craft involved. So my advice is to honor your truth, honor your obsessions, stay kind of fiercely curious, and commit to the hard work and long game play
Mm.
of these living pieces of art, so that we can't rush it. And sometimes it doesn't happen on the timelines that we want, but the universe has divine timing sometimes. So trust yourself, but continue to do the really hard work. And I tell myself that literally every day.
Yeah, me too. One thing I love the way you talk about crime fiction, and to explain that a little further. I think that you really imbue it with such passion, and you honor it. It's, in other words, you don't downplay its importance. Sometimes, I think genre folks of all sorts feel a little bit like, well, we were taken seriously in our MFA programs and that kind of thing. And, and we aren't held up to the height of the literary. But I think that when you're speaking, you get a sense of that not being the case. And we shouldn't feel that way about ourselves, that we are doing important work. And it's as literary and as rich as anything that might be, quote unquote, considered a literature. Whatever that is, it all is really, right? So I appreciate that. So one thing I want to sort of, as we wrap up here, end with, though, is that now, this is just the beginning of your career. What questions do you have about what the future holds? What can be, what are any anxieties, any questions that you're sort of wondering about? Because I think the sort of crucial, thinking about debuts and writers who are early in their careers, there's a little bit of looking back, but there's also looking forward. So what are you looking forward to, and however you want to interpret that?
Oh, totally. And I love the way you frame that as well, John. For me, keeping experimentation alive is vital. So how do I continue to keep the work just catching fire for itself, while also having time melt away and being utterly seamless and feeling like this, just kind of psychologically really gripping experience, but still keep it weird and keep it kind of feeling like something that is being discovered, because that's the character. I'm only going to write these 4 books from Sister Holiday's perspective that I've been, contracted for, but, the character herself is kind of in this world of seeing and synthesizing, but like kind of constantly being surprised by the wildness of it all. So for me, like, books 3 and 4 need to feel experimental, but then going beyond that, I want to write a queer heist novel, but I want it to be nonlinear. And so, like, I want to continue to take chances, but not for the sake of just the chance, but just because life is peculiar.
Right.
Like, we can't predict life. And so what I think the novel is really good at is, like, giving us so much space to, like, I don't know, just be in someone else's head and experience. And it's a really sacred and beautiful thing. So for part of that connection is bringing that experimentation in. So I like thinking about cinema. I like thinking about virtual reality, even just, writing longhand or different modes of drafting, writing on the legal pad. This is really how Divine Ruin is, like, right here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's just also, like, gives you a sense of how insanely non-linear my brain is, but, those kinds of things. So going forward, how to keep experimentation alive within the crime fiction genre, which has to have a forward momentum, propulsion. I like a pacey read. I like keeping it whipping along, but then, giving it so much contour and sort of spaces to kind of free fall.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the lovely thing about crime fiction is there are definite forms, almost like formal poetry, but part of the fun in writing those forms is and playing with them is breaking and reshaping them. And certainly, I think you're doing that in your work, and I think it's an excellent way to consider, evolving the genre. I highly recommend to all you listeners out there to check out Margot's books. Scorched Grace and Blessed Water. And soon, say the title again for me, Margot. I loved it, but I'm going to mess it up. Divine Ruin? No.
Divine Ruin. Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And which I'm super excited. I can't wait to see that cover. The covers are great too, folks. I have mine with me right now. So Margot, how can we find you if we want to reach out and ask you more questions?
Like, roll up to my house. Miss the conferences are so fun. I'm so sad that I'll have to miss the VoucherCon in late August, but my website is just my name, Margot Douaihy, MargotDouaihy.com. I am on Instagram at Neon Margot. Check it somewhat infrequently, but I love this community so much. I feel like I've landed at home, here, being relatively new. And so I love connecting with other writers, other readers. It makes me better and stronger. Plus, I'm a fan first and foremost. So yeah, please stay connected. Let's stay in touch.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. And, I can't wait for the next book.
Thank you. Just got to finish writing it.
Yeah, right.